Hello everyone, my name is Ruhi Parezadeh and I'm honored to be here with the Professor George Hirasaki from Rice University and former Shell colleague, a true porous media legend, and I'm honored to interview him for InterPore's Time Capsule. Let's start from your childhood. How was your childhood and the school days?
I went to start school 1 year after World War II was over, and that was quite a shock to me. I went to school, and then kids pointed their finger at me, called me Jap, and I explained to them that I was born in Texas. I'm an American. Most kids would understand. Some would just kept on insisting, I'm a Jap, which is saying that I'm the enemy, I'm not American. And so I would fight them. But after a few fights, that wasn't a problem anymore.
How was the school? What did you study? Where did you study? Which city?
I went to Viter Elementary Junior High School. Viter is between Beaumont and Orange in Southeast Texas.
What was your favorite topic in the school?
Chemistry.
And why did you like chemistry so much?
Well, first I had a very good chemistry teacher or a science teacher in the 8th grade, but he really enjoyed teaching chemistry instead of just general science. And I picked up on it and discovered my father had a college chemistry book, and I started reading it, and I found out that I could do even things like organic synthesis. I could go to the pharmaceutical supply store and buy chemicals and do experiments before I ever took any formal chemistry.
Did you do a lot of experiments?
Oh yeah, but some that were so safe, but I managed it safely.
Any explosions?
Well, I synthesized even things like TNT, but I was very careful in detonating it. I just used very small quantities, but I decided I better not do it in a larger size than what would fit into for a detonator, I use mercury fulminate that's in the cartridge, the 22 cartridge, by taking off the lead, pouring out the gunpowder, and then pouring in the TNT and using that to detonate it.
And when did you know that you want to become an engineer?
First of all, I really wanted to be an Air Force pilot, but then I found out with my eyesight, there was no way I could be a pilot. My senior year, I decided that I want to become an engineer.
When did you decide that you want to be chemical engineer or petroleum engineer?
My senior year, I went to visit Lamar Tech in Beaumont. I went to the chemistry and chemical engineering presentations, and then I asked, which I'm interested in both, and which should I take if I'm going to be interested in both. And then it was the Dean of Engineering who was giving the chemistry presentation, and he said that if you're interested in chemistry and engineering, you should major in chemical engineering.
Did you ever regret that choice?
No, I enjoyed it very much.
What did you work on in school? What was the topic of your PhD dissertation?
I went to Rice University for my PhD. My project was on the Rice Baylor Artificial Heart Project. This is Dr. DeBakey, the famous heart surgeon, wanted to build an artificial heart. This is an engineering problem, and so he teamed up with Rice University. When I got on the project, I realized that we didn't know how to compute fluid flow in 3 dimensions. That is, to how to solve the Navier-Stokes equation. And so that became my thesis.
How did you get interested in porous media research? When was it?
Well, whenever I went to work for Shell, it was fluid flow, but it was fluid flow of 3 phases: oil, water, and gas. But it was always flow through subsurface flow, through rocks, through sand, or it could be now even shale. It was flow through porous media.
When did you start to work on enhanced oil recovery?
I started working on enhanced oil recovery perhaps when I was in operations in a oil company, in Shell Oil in Los Angeles. I went to a well review. They were doing a steam drive. Found a place where they were been injecting steam for a number of years, and then steam was just blowing out the production well. And I asked them, what's going on there? How is it working? And so I asked them to measure the temperature and the formation between the injection and producing well. And then when they measured the temperature, the maximum temperature was just about the temperature of steam at 1 atmosphere. It meant that there was no pressure drop across the reservoir. The steam was just going from the injector to the producer without creating a pressure gradient to displace the heat of the oil. And so I called up my colleagues at the Shell Bel Air laboratory, and they said, oh, we're working on steam foam that can increase the resistance of gas flow or steam flow. This is when we got started working with foam, or increasing the mobility or reducing the mobility of gases such as steam and later natural gas and carbon dioxide.
One of the famous labs, Bel Air Lab, I think many of us owe to the knowledge that was created from that Bel Air Lab. Can you talk about that Bel Air Lab, the people who worked there, and how was the atmosphere and the topics that they were working on? As Shell employee, I sometimes go back to the old reports that were generated there, and it makes me so proud. And the depth of the science in those reports are really exemplary.
Probably the most exciting time, or the most interesting time, was when we were working on chemical flooding. I was a chemical flooding group leader, and we had people like George Stegemeyer, Larry Lake, Gary Pope in our group. And then Lenore was in the miscible flooding group. And then we learned from Fred Helfrich about chromatography theory applied to subsurface. And then we found that whenever you have chemicals that flow with water and react with the rock, is similar to chromatographic flow, and how different components travel with different velocities when you flow through porous media. And this is what was so exciting, learning about how this happens. And now we were developing simulators to simulate this would happen and be able to use it in the subsurface to predict how chemicals and oil, water, and gas flow in porous rock.
Late 80s, you did also this great work on thermodynamics of wetting films and fundamentals of wettability. That I remember I had a Shell colleague working on wettability alteration by low salinity water flooding, and he was always mentioning that, this work that Professor Hirasaki did in the late 80s, early 90s, still is the most advanced work in 2012 or 13 that he was working. How did that work?
Wettability work is an area that I started after we stopped working on chemical flooding. First of all, Shell thought that reservoirs were all water wet. That thinking at Shell at that time was that whenever you do a water flood, just a tongue of water flows below oil and floats it upward, and then the pressure gradient flows oil and water together, but with water underneath oil. This is the segregated flow model that Shell had at that time. But I remember Bob Backwell taking me aside and said, George, that's not the way it is. That the oil reservoirs are not all water wet. They oftentimes are what's called mixed wet. And then wettability is a very important phenomena. And so after we stopped working on chemical flooding, I was assigned to work on wettability, try to understand it and find out what is the proper wettability state and how do we deal with it. And something that was an eye-opener for me goes back to something like 1980. I remember going to a garden research conference. Kishore Mohanty, as a student in Minnesota, gave a presentation. He talked about the DLVO theory, Daryagan, Landau, Overbeck, Verwey. There's the Russian and Dutch people who were working independently trying to understand wettability during World War II. And so they didn't collaborate, but they together came up with the understanding. Then this was the basis for the oil, water, wetting rock minerals. And this is when I started reading the literature. It went back into the 1930s, before I was even born. And so I started finding out about the basic, what's the underlying microscopic forces that govern the flow or the equilibrium state of oil, water, and mineral surfaces. And that was the beginning of my research on wettability.
In early 90s, you decided to leave Shell. Why did it happen?
In the early 90s, this is a time whenever the price of oil became very low because OPEC had flooded the market, and then with the low prices that the industry was having to reduce costs, and so they were reducing staff. And a lot of people were going to be laid off. and I was giving a option that I could take early retirement and get compensated for taking early retirement. And at the same time, I had been elected National Academy of Engineering. The Dean of Engineering at Rice said that if I want to come and teach full-time, that let him know. And so I decided that I'll do just that, and I joined the faculty at Rice University. I knew there's a lot of promise in foam as a mobility control for gas injection processes. But the oil and gas industry in the 90s wasn't interested in enhanced oil recovery. But this is a time whenever we had what was called Superfund sites. We recognized that chlorinated solvents like dry cleaning fluids and degreasing fluids were like forever chemicals, that they very slowly degraded, and then if they leaked into the groundwater, then it's carcinogenic and it would be contaminate groundwater.
You have worked on foam for 40, 50 years almost. And what's so fascinating about foam?
Because we're still learning more about it. The foam is not a simple fluid. If we study it, we can understand it, and we can be able to predict its behavior. And this is what we've been trying to do by doing research, that instead of going blindly and doing experiments, we can develop the understanding and do quantitative predictions of how the process should work.
And again, what fascinates you about foam?
It's a transformation of science and putting it to useful engineering application. It's very much chemistry and physics in addition to geosciences all put together, and then to quantify it, you have to use understanding of mathematics to be able to simulate the process and apply it in 3 dimensions.
If you were to pick one topic of all that you go back in time and they say, okay, you are going to work on the next 50 years on this topic, what would that topic be?
The foam is an area there's still a lot more to learn, even though so much has been already learned. There are so many new surfactants that's becoming available that I haven't really had a chance to do very much to experiments to understand its properties. I see still new frontiers all the time. And so I think there's still a lot more potential in understanding of how it works and development of new surfactants so it can be more efficient and more economical.
Lately, we see some universities that they'd like to shift away from oil and gas research. Especially in Europe, we see this a lot. Do you think we will still need petroleum engineers, and why?
Yes, that the petroleum isn't going to just go away. We still need petroleum, both petroleum and natural gas, both as a energy source as well as chemical source. We may not be using it to the same quantities as we have in the past, but it will still continue to be used. But then we also have to do something about the carbon dioxide. What is new is carbon dioxide capture and sequestration, that putting it underground so it's not in the atmosphere. But what not many people know is that we've been injecting carbon dioxide underground since the 1970s. My experience has been more in the 1980s, but the industry has been doing it for a very long time. There's a market for carbon dioxide for injected underground for getting additional oil recovery. Whenever there's a oil field that's no longer economic, it doesn't mean that there's no more oil that's left in it. There's still what's called residual oil that could not be displaced by injecting water. But by injecting CO2, you can recover much additional oil. And you can leave the CO2 underground. This is sequestration. And so if you use CO2 to benefit additional oil recovery, but then you leave it in the ground and sequester and to store it or sequester CO2, this is what we call carbon capped utilization and storage.
What are your hobbies, apart from science and discovering and writing papers or books?
My hobbies, right now, I do a lot of gardening, but let me go back to what I really want to be able to do when my health permits. That's windsurfing and skiing. That I still have 2 pairs of skis. One is a softer skis for skiing moguls. Other are racing skis, which I haven't used in a few years. I hope to use my mogul skis to still continue skiing in the wintertime. And then in the summertime is windsurfing.
I remember a few years ago you showed me the collection of stones and rocks that you had. How we start the polishing work.
When I was back in working in Shell, it was in the West Coast division, living in Los Angeles. I always wanted to live in California because there's so many things to see there. And so I asked one of my colleagues, I want to see the Pacific coast. I wanted to drive along the coast of California all the way up to Oregon. And then he mentioned that there's an agate beach. Chuck Blankenhorn is his name. And then I went to what was called Agate Beach and I had to climb down a cliff to get to the beach. When I got on the beach, there was all this gravel on the wetted by the waves. And then instead of sand, it was just a gravel, but it was all different colors, shiny rocks. I filled up my pockets and just brought back what I could back up the cliffs and to my car. And then when I got back home, I looked at it and they were all dull. But then Chuck Blankenhorn told me that, oh, well, what you have to do is you have to tumble it and polish it. And so I got a tumbler, polished it, and they became very beautiful stones. They were agates. They're beautiful.
I see you have worked 26 years for Shell and then more than 32 years for Rice University now. How would you describe, working with the students? How do you mentor them?
Students are eager to learn. There are so many things we have still yet to learn. If they like to join the venture of trying to understand what's going on, I want to partner with them. This is the approach that I took in university research.
How does a perfect student look like for you? Like you say, okay, this student has the potential and you want to work with him or her.
The students that are asking questions instead of just doing what they is told to do. That to be a researcher, you have to ask yourself questions, ask questions of others to understand what it is that you don't know. Instead of just doing what you know how to do, you have to search for what is yet unknown, maybe to you as well as others. And so that's why you have to ask questions with your peers, with whoever that you meet in the literature, trying to find out, is there an answer? If there's not, maybe you should seek that answer.
Any advice for future researchers or engineers that you want to share?
The advice is to understand what it is that you're working with. Don't just think of making something, but think of why does it work? This is the question, why is so important instead of just making a product.
If you want to summarize your life in one word, what would that be, that word?
Be a seeker of knowledge, the truth, or seeker of experiences. Because like the windsurfing, skiing, I think of that's seeking new experiences.
One contribution that you are most proud of in your basically research career?
I guess when I think of it collectively, the research I've done with foam, I've been doing it for decades. And I see now it being applied. And so I'm proud of that being applied and that I was able to start very early on when there was not very much understanding of how it worked. And now that we have that understanding and we're being able to make it work economically and with much more success than the early trials that we had when it was first being tested.
Thank you very much, George. It was a pleasure having you here.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.
One of the prides of my life is working with you without any doubt. And thanks a lot for everything that you have done to scientific community, industry, and academia.
Thank you.
Thank you.